On the night of February 9th, 2004, a 21-year-old college student crashed her car on a quiet road in rural New Hampshire. A passing school bus driver stopped and asked if she needed help. She told him no. She said she had already called for assistance. She had not called anyone. By the time police arrived just minutes later, Maura Murray was gone. She had walked away from that crash site into one of the coldest nights of the year, into dense forest, into complete darkness, and she was never seen again. 20 years later, nobody knows what happened to her. And the people who have spent those 20 years looking have only found more questions. Who was Maura Murray? Maura Murray was a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. By most accounts, she was bright, driven, and well-liked. She was an athlete, a competitive runner who had earned a place on the cross-country team. She came from a close military family. Her father, Fred Murray, was a devoted and deeply involved parent who would later spend years of his own life publicly searching for answers about his daughter. But in the weeks before she disappeared, something was clearly wrong. In the days leading up to February 9th, Maura had been involved in a minor incident on campus that resulted in disciplinary attention. She had also recently gone through a difficult breakup. People who knew her described a young woman who seemed increasingly stressed and withdrawn in the days before she vanished. On February 9th, a Monday, Maura sent emails to her professors and her employer telling them she would be away for a week due to a death in the family. There had been no death in the family. She then packed a bag, withdrew several $100s in cash from an ATM, purchased alcohol from a local liquor store, and got in her car. She drove north, alone, with no clear destination that anyone has ever been able to confirm. That decision, to get in the car and drive north on that particular Monday, is where the mystery truly begins. The crash on Route 112. Maura's car, a black Saturn, was found crashed against a snowbank on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. It was a rural stretch of road in the White Mountains region, the kind of road where houses are sparse, cell service is unreliable, and in February, the cold is serious and unforgiving. The crash itself was not severe. The car had clipped a snowbank and come to rest at an angle on the side of the road. The airbags had deployed. There was a small amount of blood inside the vehicle. Witnesses who passed in the minutes after the crash described seeing a young woman standing near the car, appearing shaken but physically present. A school bus driver named Butch Atwood stopped to check on her. Maura told him she had already called AAAA and that help was on the way. Atwood, concerned, offered to call police himself from his nearby home. Maura told him that was not necessary. Atwood drove home. He then called police anyway. Officers arrived within minutes. The car was still there. Maura Murray was not. She had left behind her keys, her cell phone, some clothing, and the alcohol she had purchased earlier that day. A box of wine in the car had been partially opened. She had walked away from the crash site, into the dark, into the New Hampshire winter, and disappeared completely. The investigation and its problems. The search that followed was significant, but hampered from the start by a critical window of lost time. Because Maura had told the bus driver help was already coming, and because Atwood waited briefly before calling police, there was a gap between when Maura walked away and when searchers began looking. In a case involving dense forest and winter conditions, that gap matters enormously. Search teams covered the surrounding area. Volunteers joined official search efforts. Nothing was found, no footprints leading anywhere definitive, no physical evidence in the woods indicating which direction she had gone, no witnesses who saw her after she left the crash site. The investigation raised questions that remain unresolved. A couple living in a house near the crash site reported seeing a man standing in the area that night whose description did not match anyone officially accounted for. A witness reported seeing a vehicle parked near the crash scene in the moments after the accident in a way that seemed unusual. These details were investigated and led nowhere conclusive. Maura's phone records showed no calls made after she left campus. The AAA call she claimed to have made to the bus driver, it never happened. Her bank records showed the cash withdrawal, but no activity afterward. Law enforcement in New Hampshire has faced sustained criticism over the handling of the case, particularly in its early stages. Family members and independent investigators have argued that certain leads were not pursued aggressively enough and that the initial response did not treat the situation with sufficient urgency. The case was never formally closed. It remains an active missing persons investigation to this day. The theories. Because no definitive answer has ever emerged, the Maura Murray case has generated more theories than almost any other missing persons case in recent American history. Each theory has its supporters. None has been proven. The first and most straightforward theory is that Maura walked into the woods that night intending to harm herself, and that her remains are somewhere in the surrounding forest, undiscovered. This theory is supported by her emotional state in the days before she disappeared, the apparent lack of a clear destination, and the fact that no confirmed sighting of her has ever been established after the crash. The second theory is that she was picked up by a passing vehicle, either voluntarily or by force, and that whatever happened next happened off that road and away from any witnesses. New Hampshire, Route 112 sees relatively little traffic on winter nights, but it is not deserted. Someone could have stopped. Someone could have offered a ride. Someone could have done something far worse. A third theory, pushed by some independent researchers over the years, suggests that Maura may have intentionally disappeared, that the events of that night were planned, that she staged a new life somewhere, and that she is alive today under a different identity. Supporters of this theory point to the cash withdrawal, the emails to her professors, and the packed bag as evidence of preparation. Her family has largely rejected this theory. Her father, Fred, has said publicly and repeatedly that his daughter would never have voluntarily put her family through what they have experienced. The fourth and most troubling theory involves a specific individual in the area whose behavior on the night in question has drawn scrutiny from independent investigators. This person has been named publicly in documentary coverage and online investigations over the years. No charges have ever been filed. Law enforcement has not publicly confirmed this person as a formal suspect. 20 years later, Fred Murray spent years driving to New Hampshire, knocking on doors, putting up flyers, and demanding answers from law enforcement and from anyone who might know something. He passed away in 2021, having never learned what happened to his daughter. The case has been covered in multiple documentaries, podcast series, and books. A dedicated online community continues to analyze every available piece of evidence, interview witnesses, and generate new leads. Some of these independent investigators have uncovered details that mainstream coverage missed entirely. But Maura Murray has not been found. No remains, no confirmed sightings, no arrest, no explanation for where a 21-year-old woman went after walking away from a minor car crash on a cold February night in rural New Hampshire. The road is still there, the trees are still there, and the question is still the same one it was 20 years ago. Where did Maura Murray go? A crashed car, a cold night, a 2-minute window, and 20 years of silence. Whatever happened to Maura Murray happened fast, in the dark, on a quiet road that most people have never heard of, and whoever knows the truth has not spoken. Subscribe for more cases like this one, and tell me in the comments, which theory do you believe?